You're listening to Soundside. I'm Libby Denkman. You may have heard the federal government is headed for a shutdown. Congressional leaders from both parties met with President Trump yesterday at the White House. They failed to make progress toward the funding deal that is needed to avert a shutdown. Democrats say they want to reverse some Medicaid cuts that Republicans passed earlier this year and extend tax credits for people on Obamacare plans. Meanwhile, Republicans falsely claim that their colleagues across the aisle are shutting down the government to fund health care for unauthorized immigrants. Barring a last-minute breakthrough in the Senate, the government will shut down for the first time in almost 7 years, just after midnight tonight. Suzan DelBene represents Washington's 1st district in Congress, which includes the suburbs of Seattle on the east side like Redmond, Bothell, and Lake Stevens. She's also, by the way, the chair of the DCCC, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, which is the group focused on electing Democrats to Congress in 2026. Congresswoman, thank you very much for being here during a very busy 24 hours.
It is a pivotal 24 hours and important because we should be fighting to support our communities, fighting for healthcare in our communities, and keeping the government open. And so we're here in Washington, D.C. to do that. My Republican colleagues in the House aren't even in town.
Mike Johnson kind of pursuing a kind of gambit, I would say, not bringing his members back while the Democrats are in town. Ready in case there is some kind of a new deal that comes across that needs to be voted on in the House. So we are hearing that the meeting with Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, John Thune, and Mike Johnson at the White House didn't make much progress. House Democrats held a caucus meeting last night. The president posted a deep fake video on Truth Social also last night that depicted Hakeem Jeffries in a sombrero and had a fake Chuck Schumer saying that Democrats wanted to get votes from illegal immigrants. So if that's any indication of how these negotiations went, not great. What can you tell me about where Democrats stand this hour?
Well, first, that video was disgusting and pretty much highlights that there is not a serious effort on the Republican side to find a path forward. You either come to negotiation work or you spend your time on social media posting disgusting videos, but that is not in the interest of the American people. What we should be doing is working to make sure that we are protecting healthcare for millions of people in this country, that we are working on a bipartisan agreement to keep the government open. There's no interest. Republicans are, and that was yet another sign that they want to shut down.
This showdown over funding has the feeling of what happened back in March when there was a big fight over whether Democrats would provide the votes in the Senate to fund the government. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer at the time decided against withholding those votes. Reportedly, part of the thinking was that there's a lot of power that you turn over when you shut down a government to the executive branch, and that risk was too high for the possible gains. Again, that was back in March. What is different today about this funding battle for Democrats?
Well, let's talk about what's happening on healthcare in particular right now. We've already seen job losses in our region as folks see our healthcare providers are seeing these massive cuts coming into focus. We know Republicans passed this big, ugly bill that will take away healthcare for millions of Americans, massive cuts to Medicaid or Apple Health in our region. But we also have the premium tax credits that people have used to make healthcare more affordable for people who buy their healthcare on the exchange on Washington Health Plan Finder. Right now, it's estimated by our state that the premiums are going to go up by 65% for folks on the exchange if those tax credits aren't renewed. And notices go out in October to people. Open enrollment starts November 1st. Republicans are talking about doing, just short-term funding, not addressing this, which means that we're going to see skyrocketing premiums for folks right now. They keep saying we can deal with this later. This is happening right now to people in our communities. The job losses have taken place already. This is a crisis that Republicans have created. Folks across the country are understandably outraged about the cuts that are happening to healthcare. American people want their representatives to stand up and protect healthcare in this country. We're absolutely doing that. Republicans can't even show up for work. That's where we're at. We're going to continue fighting, and we should be able to support healthcare and keep the government open.
So you do not like this proposal by Republicans that you can negotiate the healthcare subsidies, the ACA subsidies separately, and that we just get a short-term stopgap funding bill passed that will go through November, mid-November, something like that, and that these negotiations can happen separately. You're not buying that.
Well, first of all, turns out the fiscal year always starts on October 1st. So Republicans have known all along that this was the deadline. We're uninterested in coming to the table and negotiating. We should be much further along. They're in charge. Again, they have the House, the Senate, and the White House have refused to move forward on legislation to fund the government. And we should be funding the government for a full year, not this short-term kicking the can down the road. But now they are also setting us up for a bigger healthcare crisis. Open enrollment starts November 1st. Notices go out in October. They're saying, we don't care about that. We are just going to continue to move forward and we'll worry about it later. We need to worry about it now. I've talked to folks throughout our region, small business owners who, one, Maya, who talked about having to dip into retirement savings to pay for healthcare. She wants to provide healthcare for the rest of her employees in her business. And if the tax credits are gone, it's going to be much more expensive and harder for her to do that. Again, 80,000 people in Washington state are estimated to lose healthcare coverage if the tax credits aren't renewed.
What about the costs here of the shutdown? This is estimated to cost billions in dollars for the U.S. economy. The furloughs of government employees affect services. The Department of Health and Human Services shutdown would mean 32,000 employees go on furlough. And Russ Vought, the OMB director, has drawn up these reduction in force plans. The president has threatened mass firings. What about the potential pitfalls here for what could happen to federal workers, what could happen to other parts of the economy if this shutdown stretches on?
I think it really tells you everything you need to know that Republicans are doubling down on ways to hurt the American people. That's their solution is let's threaten and think of ways we can hurt the American people. We're fighting to help working families. Talking to people on the ground, cost of living has gone up under President Trump. Tariffs, the big ugly bill, all raising prices on housing, on food, on healthcare, on energy costs. People are saying, make sure you put working families first, lower the cost of living, make sure that we have affordable healthcare. That's the priority. Instead of listening to the people, what are Republicans saying? We're going to threaten to hurt people even more by slashing important government services. I think that says it all and why it's so important that we stand strong to fund the government and stand up for healthcare.
Let's talk a little bit about the politics of this, just putting your DCCC hat on. The public and their perception of the shutdown tends to matter in midterm elections. Is there a risk that Democrats are seen as owning the shutdown and in 2026 voters respond?
Well, first of all, people absolutely know that Republicans are in charge of the White House, the Senate, the House. They have the trifecta. So they are in charge and it is their responsibility to lead. It's also very clear that if you want to come up with solutions to address the issues that the American communities are facing, you work with folks to help make that happen. The math hasn't changed. If you want to work to find a solution and get votes, you work across the aisle, you negotiate, and we come up with solutions to support the American people. There's no leadership on the other side. You already talked about the fact that we have a president who did a meeting, and out of that, all that came out of that was a disgusting tweet, nothing about what we should be doing to help make sure that we keep the government open and support working families. The American people see that across the board, and the American people want folks to address the rising costs. They want to make sure that we have health care. Everyone needs health care for their families. That people are feeling the impact. And so absolutely, I've talked to folks across our region, and through talking to folks across the country, the American people want to see not only the tax credits extended, but they want to make sure, and frankly, the most fiscally responsible thing we can do is make sure that people have affordable quality healthcare. Actually saves us money in the long run, as opposed to more and more uncompensated care, people getting sicker, our hospitals being overrun in the ER because people don't have access to care. That's the path that Republicans are taking us down.
I think because we're hearing this talking point more and more, and the president's deepfake video that he tweeted last night was focused on this as well. The Vice President J.D. Vance has repeated over and over again that Democrats are trying to shut down the government in order to fund healthcare for illegal aliens. That term, illegal aliens, repeated over and over again in these comments by the White House and then also other Republicans. I'd just like you to address that directly. Like, is this about funding healthcare for undocumented people in order somehow to win some sort of political support for Democrats?
It's just a lie, an absolute lie. They are trying to distract from the real issues that are facing the American people. The legislation that they put in place with massive cuts to healthcare for the American people all across the country, their refusal to look at how we keep costs low, their refusal to extend the premium tax credits that help people premiums become more affordable. All of this, they're distracting from that. If they are serious, if they actually cared about keeping the government open and doing work for the American people, they would be at the table right now. And again, House Republicans aren't even here. They're not even in town. They are uninterested. I guess they're on vacation while we are here trying to find a solution going forward. But we're going to be here all the way through and continue to do everything we can because our job is to stand up for the American people, not take orders or be blindly loyal to Donald Trump.
Really quickly before we go, something that people in our region are watching pretty closely is what's going on in Portland. The President Trump's ordered to deploy the National Guard to Portland. The president said he authorized troops to use full force to curb protests outside of immigration and customs enforcement facilities. The president has also sent troops to D.C., to L.A., Chicago. Political leaders in Washington say they are planning for this to happen in Seattle. They're expecting for it to happen at some point. What is your role in the congressional delegation in terms of oversight, in terms of pushing back on this? Are you watching this unfold? Where are you at with this issue?
It is a political stunt. You know that the places that President Trump has picked to deploy the National Guard have been political decisions on his part. You did not hear the folks from Oregon or the folks from Portland asking for help. They have local law enforcement. The city is not at all as the president has described. I was just in Portland last week, but it has nothing to do with that.
You didn't feel like it was war ravaged?
Absolutely not. And yet that is, in fact, I don't even know when he's been there, so I'm not even sure how he can talk about it. But Oregon has filed a lawsuit. There will be a legal challenge. And this is incredibly expensive for the president to continue to do this when we are at a time where we are facing a shutdown that Republicans and the president are pushing us into, when we have a healthcare crisis in our country. Instead of focusing on that and making sure we're putting resources where they need to be, this is where the president's focus is: fear and intimidation.
Representative Suzan DelBene represents the East Side communities, including Redmond, Bothell, Lake Stevens. Thank you so much for being here, Representative. I really appreciate your time today, and we'll be closely tracking what happens over the next several hours as we head towards this deadline.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Soundside. This show is only possible because listeners support us. If you're able to give right now, please check out the show notes for a link to donate. And don't forget, you can listen live on KUOW 94.9 FM Seattle at noon and 8 p.m., Monday through Thursday, or anytime online at KUOW.org.